Hi and welcome to Fantasy Footy Fan. Jeff here. So I hope you all had a good week in fantasy. As you can see with my team, it was a really good week. I scored a 2307 and I was ranked 719 for the week, and that really bumped up my overall rank. I went up 5,000 spots. And so now I'm ranked 5,870, and I'm just really wrapped with that. It was a good week, and sometimes that's all it is. You get a big bumper week, and that really just does boost your rankings. You might be feeling like you're a bit off the pace. Maybe you're sort of in around the 10k or 15k ranking, maybe even a lot higher than that, or lower than that. But you get a good week where your premiums fire, and then you can make some real ground. So fortunately, I was able to do that. I was waiting for all my premiums to fire, and I've been doing the usual downgrade upgrade thing, and just keep bringing in premiums, and keep getting these rookies off the ground. Obviously, fortunately, I've had rooks who have been performing well. So if you have a look through my team, you'll see that obviously some of the players that have really scored well, like my midfield, really did fire. So looking through, and I'll go through some of these players when I go through some of the games, but obviously Harry Sheezel a 71, that's going to be a concern for all of us. He's obviously playing now more midfield time, and we have to make a decision whether we keep him in our teams. He's still valued at 996k. He went down 52k this last week, and then going through like his previous week, I'm pretty sure he dropped I think something like I think it was like 12k or something like that prior as well to that. So he's starting to drop in cash, and so it's something that we need to, I guess, make a decision on whether we keep him or not. I guess Clarko could just decide, this game I'm going to play him at halfback again. So I think for now I'm probably holding. I'm still making a decision. I guess when you have a look at the defenders, and you have a look at actually we'll go through the stat center, and if we have a look at defenders and sort of the best defenders there, obviously I've got Harry Sheezel, Nick Martin, Nick Dacos, Hayden Young. They're all in the top 5 ranked defenders for average, and Luke Ryan's the only one I don't have. So I guess an option would be to trade Sheezel to Luke Ryan. It does make me about 100k, I think, and I get a player who's averaging over 100, and Luke Ryan's got St Kilda this week, which we all expect him to do quite well. So that's an option, but I'll get into trades a bit later. Getting back to my team, so Nick Martin continues to put out big numbers. I'm so wrapped with that. Hayden Young, an 81, his scores are just going to be like that, up and down. I was pretty happy to get Nick Dacos, but also to get his captaincy. I had Gawn just because I only had Barnett that I could loophole properly. So I was going to VC Zach Butters, but I thought, I think because O'Connor was in the team, I thought O'Connor may tag Butters. So I thought, I don't want to sort of waste my VC. Maybe I'll go with Gawn. I was thinking Walsh too, but that would have been better. But I went with Gawn. I thought 109. I reckon Dacos would do better than that against West Coast. So I thought I'd go Dacos, and that's worked out really well. And Dacos is now back into ripping form, playing in the midfield, and his average is going to continue to go up. Matt Roberts, it's disappointing with a 39, but we'll get in my trades later, but I actually think I'll be keeping him still this week and trading elsewhere. McKercher's got the role, another 88 for him. Pretty happy as well with Riley Hardiman to get that 47. Looks like he's got that job security. Daniel Curtin obviously is the one that looks like a bust. Now, having said that, Josh Worrell is out for like 6 to 8 weeks. So maybe they keep Daniel Curtin, but he really has not been playing well these last couple of weeks, and he's been subbed out both games. So yeah, I'll just have to wait and see. I'm hoping, obviously, for my sake, that he's named so he can make some cash. But yeah, we'll just wait on that. So Sam Walsh had an awesome game. Playing against Melbourne. Got to watch that game as well. So 143. Jack Steele obviously came out, as we all saw, with no strapping on the knee. So he was destined for a good game, you could say. And so if I look at that midfield, 131, 128 from Butters. And Bont, I wanted to get Bont in last week against Hawthorn and this week against Richmond. And I guess I'm happy with the 126, but I was hoping against Richmond it might be a touch higher. But still, nevertheless, very happy with that. So glad Tom Green played. Got a 98 out of him, and I'll take that. Darcy Wilson, the last few rounds has been awesome, and I'm happy to play him on the ground. Closey, that actually worked out really well, I guess mainly because Gold Coast were playing North, and so he was able to get a really good score. So now that's increased his cash flow again. So as part of my trades, I wanted to get rid of, as much as I want to bring in premiums, I also really want to get rid of the worst player on my ground, so the worst rookie spot, effectively. So Dempsey was just not performing. It wasn't looking good. I really wanted to get rid of him, and I had him in the forward line, and so I really wanted to get Zorko in. He's got the role. I think if he gets injured, well, then so be it. I'll trade him, but I wanted that in my forward line to get Dempsey out. And of course I had Yo, and Yo's out for a couple of weeks, so I had to trade him, and then I traded him for Revel to get the cash to Zorko. But that was just for this week, and I had to make a choice of who do I play on the ground. Do I play Revel or Gallagher? Thomas was named as the sub, so I had Gallagher, and I had to make that choice, and I thought, Revel might actually do all right. In the end, it was only 10 points difference, so it's nothing major. And he had a 57, but this week with the trades I'm going to make, he's going to end up being on my bench, and I won't have to worry about having a low-performing rookie, because when I look at my team, Roberts, McKercher, Wilson, Closey, and even Powell, Fife, and Reed, they're all my players on my field who obviously I wouldn't consider a premium. And all these guys all have the potential to put up a decent score. So I'm pretty happy with having them still on my field. But obviously I need to get Revel off, and I need to get a better player on. And so I'll go through that in a minute. So as far as the games actually went, so I'll just move on to my team here. So as far as the games and some of the players that obviously were relevant to fantasy, and some players we could potentially bring in, having a look at that Carlton-Melbourne game. So as I mentioned, Sam Walsh got a 143. There's probably really not a lot to mention about some of these premiums. They're good. That it's worth getting them in. So Walsh now, he went up 26k. He's got a break even of 97. He's 960k. So he's a premium. He's going to have games where, he'll get maybe 100, 101, 102, but then he's going to have these big games where he gets these 140s. So I'm very happy with having him in my team. But as far as any other players, so I think Williams didn't play. So he really needed to be traded from your team. And I mean, I can mention players like Cripps and Newman and this and that, but they're just not players I'm going to really consider for my team. I'm really just looking at getting premiums in, or getting undervalued premiums, premiums that have dropped a bit in price. But going to Melbourne, and Petrarca is is obviously a player of interest. He had a monster game, and I got to watch this game, and he nearly won the game off his own boot. He had such a good game. He had 21 possessions, took 6 marks, 7 tackles, kicked 5 goals. It's just an awesome game playing in the forward line, mostly in the forward line. We're hoping that he gets forward status, but he put up a 134. So now we got to make a decision on whether we bring him in, because he's dropped now. So he went up 7k, had a pretty high break even, but he went up 7k. But that gets him down to 815. So Christian Prochaka is 815k. That is such a bargain. And his break even is 90. So this is probably a good week to bring him in. You could potentially wait and not bring him in this week. You could probably wait maybe till next week. Melbourne have West Coast, and the last game on Sunday, that's I think in Perth as well. Yeah, maybe this is the good week to bring him in. If he's playing against West Coast, there's every chance he could go big again. So he's definitely one of the picks for the week, and one to consider for really good value, 815k, and for what he can do, I think he's absolutely an underpriced. I think I said undervalued premium before. Yeah, sorry, he's an underpriced premium. Max Gawn saved his score at the end there, and ended up getting a 109. It didn't look like he was going to get there, but yeah, he ended up getting there in the end. I guess there are some of you that probably don't have Max that want to get him in. He's got a break even of 139, which against West Coast he could achieve, but he's just over $1 million now. And the reality is, if you want Gawn in your team, you're just going to have to pay up to get him. So Clayton Oliver is going to be probably the most popular traded in player. So he's had the surgery on the thumb. He's got that fixed. He's playing the way that he normally plays, not as well as he was playing last year, but he is slowly now getting back to the kind of the Clayton Oliver of old. I wouldn't say he's there yet, because when I was watching this game, I just felt that I don't know. He's still a little bit off. He wasn't. He did actually get he got 8 tackles, but when I was watching the game, it just didn't feel like he was tackling the way that he did last year. He's kind of like just hanging around the ball and not necessarily going in like he used to, going in hard and getting the ball. And even on the spread, like I just didn't see him running like he used to last year. I mean, look, maybe I've got that wrong. That's just what I saw watching the game. They're just some of the little differences that I see from him this year to last year. But having said that, like he's still putting up decent numbers for fantasy. He had 26 possessions and 15 of those were handballs. But to have 4 marks and 8 tackles, but he had 3 free kicks against him, and that's what affected him getting his ton, just those 3 free kicks, which didn't help. But I think this is obviously a really good week to bring him in. If we have a look at Oliver, yeah, so he went up 3k, which is really nothing. His break even 74, which against West Coast you would think that he would get that. And he's only 725k, so it makes perfect sense that he would probably be the most popular in. And for me, I'm actually bringing him in because at that price, I can afford him. I do have 241k remaining in salary, so I could actually just trade any of these rookies. Probably Thomas, because his break even 73 and he's starting to lose a bit of cash. So I could actually trade like Thomas to a rookie and then upgrade maybe a Gallagher or a Campbell. I know Graham's not playing, and I think if he is not named this week, I'll probably trade Graham. But he's got the potential to score more. I mean, his break even's 37, so maybe they gave him a rest this week. I mean, Sexton did actually play quite well. But yeah, so Oliver is definitely coming into my team this week. Looking through the rest of Melbourne, Windsor, absolutely you got to hold now if you do own him, obviously. His last 2 games, that's a 99 and an 84. He made 51k this week, break even of 19. So if you manage to hold this long, well done, because it didn't look good there for a while. 38, 61, 34, 67. You definitely had the right to trade him. But out of nowhere, he's pulled out a 99 and an 84. So, you're holding and you'll ride this one out, make a lot more cash off him, and then trade him out. Blake Howes is probably the other one now. We've said a few times that it's time for him to go, and then he pulls out a score that increases his cash flow. But he made 9k last week, break even of 47. So there's no urgency to have to trade him because he's got such a low break even. He might get that and then make another 5k, 10k or something like that. So you're not losing big cash off him. So you could keep him if you needed to, and maybe trade someone else that is going to lose cash. But at the same time, absolutely, if there's no one else, and especially if you need his cash to get to a player you want, then absolutely you can go for that trade now with Howes. So some, I think, might have brought in Taj Woden. I just want to see his ownership first. So 5%, so it's not that much, but again with him, so I think he was subbed out, he started as the sub, and so that's not great for obviously if you're an owner of him. Hopefully he actually starts next week. If he's being starting as a sub, then probably time for him to go. With Geelong and Port, that was a really good game of footy. With the Geelong side, so that was pretty tough for any Stewart owners because he copped that tag from McEntee. And only put out a 64. I think looking at Stewart's scores, I think I said last week that he might be a top 6 defender, but it's hard to say that. I mean, he's averaging 83. I mean, even forget the tag, you just can't consider him at this stage. Not until he starts putting up some decent scores. He's only turned up twice in the first 9 rounds of the year. So you can't be bringing someone like that into your team. So I think, if you've got him, you may be thinking, well, then should I trade him? If you've got nothing else like urgent to do, then he might be on that urgent list for you. And I mean, look at that. He's lost 143k since the start of the season and 42k just this last week. His break even's 119. You don't expect him to get that. Geelong, who did Geelong have this week? So they played Gold Coast Thursday night. So, you wouldn't expect that he would get to that 119. Gold Coast probably won't tag him or anything. But yeah, as a premium defender, averaging 83, you can't really have that. I'm just looking at all of my primos, and what they average is important. So in my defense, everyone averages 100 or higher for my primos. In my midfield, all my primos average 100 or higher. Green obviously would be averaging over 100, but he had that game where he got injured, which wrecked his average. Gawn and Marshall averaging over 100. Zorko, Flanders, Heaney averaging over 100. So that's what you want. Obviously, you want your premiums to be averaging over 100, and you can't be having Stewart averaging 83. So yeah, if you can get rid of him, maybe you should. And then, so Dempsey's the other one, only a 49. He's got to go if you own him. Same with Jai Clark, obviously, with the numbers he's putting up. And then with Port, like Ollie Wines, still, there was a period there where we were all jumping off because we thought, well, he's not going to really do anything. But it doesn't look like he's going to do anything. But look at his last 3 games: 113, a 105, and now a 133. So you just got to give him props for that. Like his last 3 average is 117. Last 5 average 103. So we got 6% that own him. So if you own him, you're just loving that. And he's definitely a hold because of the form that he's in. Obviously, it helped not having Rosie in the team. And that helped even Butters score too. But Wines with a 133. Great game from him. Same with Butters, obviously, too. No Rosie, so he had an awesome game. A 128 from him. You're pretty happy with that if you own him. For Butters, again, he's a premium that, yeah, you could definitely bring in. He's only not tonned up twice, and all the rest are tons. So yeah, when you're getting primos, you want to get primos that are, turning up. Horn Francis, 113. I just want to check his ownership. Do people still have him? So yeah, nearly 7% owned. So yeah, you're definitely holding now if you own him. His last few scores weren't that great, but good to see him get a ton. Again, probably the Rosie factor helped with that. Break even of 77, so you're obviously holding him. Then the Dan Houston 97, so that was pretty good, but I don't know whether he's someone that you bring in. He's averaging 90, which is not too bad. If I just want to go back and have a quick look at the defenders, and who's averaging what. So so that's a long way down for Houston. I think if you're bringing any defender in your team, you're looking at this top 5. They really stand out because they're averaging 100 points or higher. And then obviously you're looking at ones maybe just under. So, a Whitfeld, Liam Duggan's not doing too bad considering. Didn't expect him to be averaging 97 by this time of the year. Bailey Dale's obviously been in fantastic form. Some of you may have traded him in, and some of you have Riley Bonner. That was a great pick. I think I was saying last week that he could potentially be traded out, but I'll talk about the Saints sooner. But yeah, looking at that, like I wouldn't be considering a Dan Houston, like bringing him in. You don't necessarily have to trade him out, but yeah, if you've got nothing else that you need to do, then you could upgrade him to one of these players that you don't have, like a Dacos or a Martin. Sheasel, maybe. So looking through Port, so as we know, Jordan Sweet didn't play, but he'll be back again this week. So I'm not sure what any of you did if you had Sweet at R2, but Sweet is definitely back this week. So that's a good sign for owners. And so that's probably it for Port and Geelong. Moving on to Fremantle and Sydney. So Jeremy Sharp, I traded him out just on the week that he began his tear. So I traded him out when he got that 86 against Richmond, which was probably my fault because he's playing against Richmond. So yeah, of course he's going to score well. So I traded him out that week in round 8 and he scored an 86 and now a 118. So he made 38k this week, another 38k. His break even's 40 and he's up to 619k. He's made 335k for the year. So what a rookie pick that was. And so if you own him and you've kept him, you're still keeping him. Ride that out and play the break-even game with him, and you'll be able to easily get to a premium from him. So another good game from Sarong, a 107. Could potentially have gotten a lot more points, but he had 19 handballs of his 34 possessions, so that's obviously impacted his scoring. Luke Ryan, I reckon he's probably the next one under that top 5 that's worth considering, especially because he's got St Kilda this week, so he should expect him to score very well this week. So if you're going to bring in a defender and you've got Martin, Dacos, even Young and Sheasel, you may have them. They're very popular picks. Then you may think about bringing in a Luke Ryan. Andrew Brayshaw, so a 98. So another good game from him, but not really considering him. Yeah, Hayden Young an 81, but that's just going to be the case with him. If you have a look at his scores, for the most part, it's pretty good. He's turning up, but on the occasion, he's getting these 80 scores, and that's just going to be the way with him, with his role. For the most part, he should average around that 100 mark, you would think, for the year. So Luke Jackson, a 73. So I got rid of him the other week because I just knew with Darcy in the team that he wasn't going to perform well. But even with Darcy not in the team, he still only scored a 73. So I think is he owned by 25%. So there's still a fair few that own him. So obviously you may have some other areas in your team that need improving. So you can hold on to Jackson. You've got the buys coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about the buys as well. So with the buys coming up, you may feel like, well, it's probably a good thing having Jackson in the team. You can sort of bring him in when your rucks are not playing. So it might be worth holding on just for those few more weeks to use him during the buys. He's not going to be scoring 90s and 100s. But to get that extra, 70, 80 points during that time that you would not normally have gotten, that definitely is a play. And Nat Fife only a 58, but that's okay. I mean, we're really struggling with having forwards that can score in our team. Yep, he dropped 15k, break even of 89. But yeah, you're still keeping him because he can put up decent scores. So he's put up an 86, an 82, a 78, that 118, of course. So for now, I'm pretty happy with having him in my team. Looking at forwards, the options in our forward line of who we might bring in. There's not a lot to choose from. We've got Zorko, Heaney, and Flanders. They're the ones. They all average over 100, and then it just drops after that. And there's not a lot of option. You're going to be bringing in a Brian Myers, a Harry Mackay, Brad Hill. I mean, you're going to be bringing these players in. They're all averaging in their 80s and very early 90s. So, we recently brought in Dylan Moore because he was in really good form. But then again, he didn't have a great game this round, a 71. It's a bit disappointing. So we are struggling in our forward line. Some have brought in McRae. Looking at the last three average, so as you can see again, Zorko, Flanders, Heaney, and Wilson is in the top 5, and then of course Dylan Moore. So you'd still stick with Dylan Moore because of his previous run, scores of 96, 114, 116. So he can definitely get to those scores again. Let's go back to that. So but yeah, with our forwards, so I'm happy to just stick with Fife for now. He's not in the top 10 averaging forwards, but he's scoring enough for me, and I'm just going to try to upgrade elsewhere, fix all the premiums in my mids and my defenders, and then I'll get to the forwards eventually. And obviously, I'm really hoping, that maybe with DPP status, we might get some mids that could be forwards, maybe a Petrarca. And then if we do, I'd be happy to bring in Petrarca then, or some of you might bring Petrarca in now because he's good value in the midfield. And then if he gets forward status, you can obviously bring him into your forward line. Jordan Clark, it was a bit tough. There was some that was saying that it would be Ryan that would be tagged and not Clark, but Clark was probably more the right matchup, I think, for Jordan. And that makes sense why he went to Jordan. And so that obviously affected Jordan's score. So Jordan only got Jordan Clark, that is, only got a 57 in the end. And you just ride that out if you're an owner. I mean, he got tagged, so you don't expect him to get a good score. But, look at his scores. Like, it's every score, barring from round 5, is in the 90s. And then his last round was a 57 because he got tagged. So you're definitely obviously holding. You're not thinking about trading him or anything like that. You just ride out that tag score. Patrick Voss player got a 32, and Josh Draper. So they're not great scores for rooks. If you own them, then you play the break-even game with them and trade them out. For the Swans, so Heaney a 106 again. Parker isn't playing, and again Parker had another really good game in the reserves. His third game now there and played quite well. You would expect he would come in this week, but maybe he won't. But I'm all really keen to see how Heaney goes with Parker in the team. Actually, normally I go through the CBAs as well if there's anything interesting that stands out with the CBAs. I haven't actually done that. Just forgotten about that. But yeah, looking at the Sydney game, as far as the CBAs go, and Heaney's still got 81% CBAs. So that's still really great, even with some of these other guys in the team, like Adams and Goulden and Warner and Rowbottom. They're all getting little bits of CBA time, but Heaney is still getting 81%. That's a great sign. It means that Longmire is basically saying, well, Heaney's my prime midfielder. I want him in there all the time, and then with my other midfielders, I'll rotate them. How Parker is going to affect that, I don't know. But we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, Heaney a 106, and he's a premium, so you just have to have him in your team. So Goulden a 95. So Goulden's season this year is a little bit up and down. He's getting, obviously most of them are tons, but on occasion he's dropped a little. But yeah, still a primo, still one to try to get in. Dropped 11k, dropped 84k. Or 11k this week, and then 84k for the season. Break even of 123. If you're really targeting him, you could bring him in this week, but you can always wait. There's every chance he may not get that break even. Actually, who does Sydney? So Sydney plays Carlton, and as you know with Carlton, they're the premium midfielders find it difficult to score against them. On occasion, you have an exception like Dacos in that game a couple of weeks ago, but remember for someone like Heaney, he may struggle against Carlton. The game is at home, but having said that, like Hewitt started as the sub, so I didn't really expect that. And as a result, you had like Sarong still get a 107, Brayshaw a 98. Normally Hewitt plays and they do a bit of a team tag situation, but yeah, I guess that didn't happen, and that may be the case again in this game coming up for Sydney. Grundy in 83. Again, we always say with Grundy, it's up and down scores with him. It's just a bit of a choice. It's a 50-50 there, whether you trade him out or you don't. Just have to wait and see and make a decision on that. And then for Sydney, there's no one really else except for Roberts. So Roberts, yeah, you can absolutely trade him out. I mean, that's a pretty big loss, 30k that he made this week, but he's made 355k for the season, so he's done his job. You can trade him, and I'm sure many would have traded him, but you still have 20%, 27% that own him, because at the moment he's not probably priority for some to trade. I know in my team, because he still has the potential to score, he's not really a priority. His last 2 weeks haven't been great, 49 and 39, but he's not really a priority to trade unless he's not named in the team. Then yeah, he would be. But I'm happy to have him on my field for now. Obviously, my priority this week is to get Revel off my team. Because I just want to get that lower scoring rookie off my team. Do that for this week, and then next week I may consider, trading a Roberts, or maybe one of the other rooks. But I think for this week, for my team, that is, your situation may be different. Maybe Roberts is one of the lower scoring rooks on your field, so you could definitely trade him out. Absolutely. So that's probably it for that game. With Hawthorn and St Kilda, for the Hawks, Meek had a 124, is pretty good. If anyone brought him in to make some cash, he's actually doing all right. Nice to see Newcomb have a decent score, so a 112 from him. Let's have a look at his form. So yeah, his form's still a little bit average, so I guess we're not really considering Newcomb. Amon a 111, so that was good. We all expected that he would have actually been doing more, especially with his role that he had. Good to see Will Day in 85. He's sort of picking up his form. He might be one to consider at a later date. But the main one there probably, I guess we would have hopefully have all traded out D'Ambrosio by now, but Dylan Moore was probably the main talking point here for Hawthorn, and so he only scored a 71. Now the Hawks have got Port, and that's away, so that could be a challenging game for the Hawks. But are you trading more in? I think if you've filled up your defenders in your mids and you're needing a forward and you've got the three big primos in your forward line, then yeah, he's probably an option. But I don't know. I wouldn't be trading him in. He's only 6% owned, I guess, so not a lot have traded him in. But yeah, I'll probably give him a miss personally. With the Saints, so wrapped Marshall. I was really upset when I brought him in. I brought him in right there, round 6. He's come off games of 117, 136, 138. I bring him in, he gets a 62 and a 73. And the temptation is to trade. And I think that's what some may have done. They may have traded Marshall to Sweet. But I was watching these games closely, particularly the Port game. And yeah, it did look like he had a knee knock and everything, but he still looked good. And with games against North and Hawthorn, I figured it was good to hold him, and I figured he would actually do well, but I didn't expect a 117 and a 164. So, with those kinds of scores, after those two low scores, he wasn't really averaging very well. But now if we go to our rucks, look at that. So Marshall is now second on the list. You got Gawn, Marshall, and of course English, Sherry and Grundy. That will always be the top 5. And so we definitely want, and we probably would have 2 of these 5 ruckmen. I think if you've got 2 of these 5, you're holding, and you're probably looking at, if you have a Grundy, you may make that one of your last upgrades, because Grundy is still scoring. And you may want to upgrade to an English or a Marshall or a Gawn even. But just so wrapped to see Marshall there at second now. I was really concerned there after those 2 games. But yeah, for Marshall owners, pretty wrapped with that 164. He had a monster game. 11 tackles as well. Speaking of tackles, and this is the thing with Jack Steele, I say this all the time, but if you want to know whether Jack Steele is going to have a good game or if he's in form, you're looking at no strapping on the leg. You're also looking at his tackle and contested possession numbers. He had 13 tackles and 12 contested possessions. So his health is good. His form is good. And so he scored a 131 at 30 possessions. 20 of those were handballs. So that could have affected his score in a negative way. But because he had all those tackles, that obviously really helped his score. So, yeah, really wrapped to have him. He went down 5K. I don't think he's going any lower than that. He's got a break even of 113. The Saints have Freo at Marvel this week, and so you would expect him to probably get close to that 113. So you could bring him in. Certainly this week you can bring him in. If you want to hold, I reckon you could. He may either drop a K or go up a K. I reckon you could probably wait till next week even if you needed to. But he's back, and he's back to being one of the main primo mids. If we go to the stats, sorry about that, where are we? If we go to the stat center and look at mids and the average. So where are we? So we got Martin sort of sitting at probably, he's sitting at 9th on that top 10 list in the midfield. So you're pretty happy with that. He's averaging 111. But yeah, out of those mids to have, you'd be looking at sort of this top 5 or 6. Obviously, you're not looking at Zorko or Heaney or Martin. You can take them out because obviously they're playing other positions. But to have, we want to be looking now at trying to get in these top guys like Walsh, Sarong, Dunkley, Merritt, even Treloar. Now I know we don't. How many is he owned by? So he's a pod. He's only owned by 1%. But come on, like the guy's averaging 112. He's the 5th best midfielder in the comp as far as average goes. He's sitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's sitting at 9th for all players in the comp as far as average goes. So at what point do we say, well, actually he becomes a top 8 mid that we need to get in? I know we don't want to pick him because of his potential for injury, but at some point we may have to bite that bullet and maybe even bring him in. But yeah, you're still probably making a big call on that because of the potential for injury. Looking at the Saints though, so Riley Bonner got that 129, and I remember saying last week that with Bonner, he was at that point where, yep, you could keep him, you could trade him, you're not going to lose a lot of money from him. He's got the potential to put out a decent score, but you could upgrade him as well. But he's come out and he's put out a 129, and that's just what he does. He's going to have these 80 scores and then bang, like a big score. And that's what he's done. You look at his season this year, he's had that 102, a 61, then a 127. That was up till round 3. And then from round 4 to round 8, it was all 190 score and then all 80s. And then bang, like a 129 in this last round. So I think with Bonner, he has been a pretty good pick. Purely because he's gone up 298k from his starting price. But I think, yeah, if you do own him, you're holding, obviously, and you can hold for as long as you really want. And he could probably be one of your last upgrades, maybe, while you're fixing other things in your team. Wangani Malira got a 119. I don't know whether... I'm not looking at bringing him in, and that's just because he's not like a top 10 defender. But, this is what he will do too. So he's actually put up 4 tons this year, a couple of 90 scores. So it's not bad. He's averaging 97. So if you feel that, he's good value, to average 97 as a defender... that is still worth having that player in your team. And if you don't have the cash to really go up to anyone higher, it could be an option. So we're all pretty wrapped with Darcy Wilson. It just means now more cash flow, break even of 36. You can play him on your field. He's gone up 364k, one of the best rookies to have this year. So he's gone up 364. Roberts has gone up 355. And what's Reed? So it looks like, by the looks of it, it looks like Wilson is probably the best rookie to have in your team as far as cash flow goes, because he's scoring and making cash. So that really helps to obviously have him on field, to have a rookie on field scoring the way he is. Sinclair was the really big disappointment, just based off his recent form. And I guess this is why I never decided to go with the Bonners and the Sinclairs and the Wangani Maliras, just only because, Sinclair is actually playing in the midfield now, but when they were all playing, in the back line, they were all sharing their scores around, or their points around. But his last 2 games, 108, 156. If we have a look at, I just want to quickly see his heat map, because I just want to see, did he still play? It looked like he was playing mainly in the midfield, but it's possible he may have spent some time down back. But he's played predominantly in the midfield, half forward. Is where but he's picked up his possessions pretty much everywhere. Just looking at his heat map, he's got his possessions like evenly spread all across the oval. But most of his time that he's spending where he's moving around has been from midfield to sort of half forward. So whereas I think last week's game was predominantly in the midfield, like across the wings, but mainly just in the midfield. So there was probably more chance to get more ball. And so that's what really helped his score last week. That he had 72% CBAs last week, but he was mainly in the midfield. This week he had 68% CBAs, which is fine again, but playing more up forward, which is probably why he didn't get enough of the ball. So yeah, I don't know whether I'd be bringing him in. I think there's probably better options there. That's why I didn't bring him in previously, but doesn't mean he doesn't have the potential to score. If he's still got that midfield role, and if he can just stay in the midfield, then I think he could be a pretty good scorer. Garcia, a 58. So for those that brought Garcia in, Hugo Garcia, that is, for the Saints. Where's he at? So break even of 26. He's made 174k, made 30k this week. So hopefully he doesn't get dropped and stays in the team and can continue to make money. But we'll wait till he maxes out. That's probably it. Jack Hayes came off the high of last week to get subbed out on 12. It was pretty disappointing. But moving on to the next game, Essendon and GWS. So don't really need to speak about Nick Martin. He's a top premium defender, and he's a player if you don't have, you just have to get in your team. If you do have him, he's there for the year. And then Zach Merritt, bit of an interesting game from him. Had a pretty average first half, probably fair to say. And then he came back pretty well in the second half to get an 87. But I guess what that means again is for non-owners, is there any way we can get him a bit cheaper? Because he's dropped 34k, 28k in this last game and break even of 140. So he's now under $1 million, could drop a little bit less than that. The Bombers have North, so maybe not. You'd expect Merritt to come out with a 140 and probably smash that break even. But yeah, if you're wanting to bring in a premium, he probably is underpriced. He's definitely an over $1 million type player. But he's a player that at some point we probably will need in our teams, and the fact that he's dropped a little bit, in price helps. So Corwell, whose son may have brought in, got a 79, which is okay. Again, as long as you've got Zorko, Flanders, and Heaney, then whoever you've got, for F4, F5, F6, if they're averaging sort of that 70 mark, then you'd be pretty happy with that because there's no other forward premiums. So you've got Powell averaging 84, Fife is averaging 71, Reed 63, but obviously he's been averaging a lot better than that in recent times. And then looking through for the rest of Essendon, so Parrish, and this was the thing with Parrish that I was saying last week. He played his Anzac Day game, which is his usual game that he plays well in. And then he played against West Coast last week. You should expect him to do well, but now he was challenged against a pretty good team in the Giants, and even though the Bombers got the win, he still only scored 60, and that was in 76% game time. He's only had 16 possessions, and 9 of those were handballs, and only 3 marks and 3 kicks. So he had a pretty average fantasy game. And, for owners, do you hold? Yeah, sure. You could definitely still hold him because, the Bombers have North this week. So if you own him, then you're absolutely holding because you would expect him to ton up this week. But, yeah, he's not really a player I'm looking at bringing in, considering you can get Oliver for so much cheaper. And then for the Giants, so yeah, Green only got a 98, but you don't complain about that. For a while there, we thought he wasn't even going to be playing in this game. But for owners, it was great because he was just a premium that ended up playing that we thought we might have lost. Some of us would have had Yo and Rosie, for example. So for him to get a 98, that's fine. But for non-owners, this is the thing. He's down to 817k. He's got a break-even of 133. The Giants have the Doggies this week, which, he should score decently, but I don't think he's going to get to that break-even. So personally, I would be targeting him if I didn't own him possibly for next week, because he is a player that, if you look at his scores, he's a player that has the potential for averaging, that 110 mark. And to get him for around 800k, that is really cheap. So I would be looking at targeting him, if not this week, then at least maybe next week or the week after. Now he does have the buy in round 12, so it is possible that you might wait till after that buy. He may go up a little bit in cash, but he would be a perfect player to bring in in round 13 or round 14. So round 13 only is Port and Freo that have the bye, so you might be okay there. But you may look at bringing him in round 15 or round 14 or maybe round 13. Because round 13, of course, is a time where we can kind of make some changes and fix some of our players up to help us through the rest of the buys. But yeah, you're definitely looking at bringing him in for his price. So Kelly only a 78, bit of a low score considering what he's been averaging. The same with Whitfield as well. And only 77, but I think with Whitfield that's just going to be the case. He's still in the top 10 for defenders with what he's averaging. He's averaging 98, but yeah, he got that 48 in round 8, break even of 143. So again, I think for me, I'm keeping my eye on Whitfield because there isn't a lot of defenders that worth bringing in. Your top 5, Sheasel, Martin, Ryan, Dacos, Young, and then Whitfield, sits there at the 6th best defender. So I think I'll be looking at him when he bottoms out and see whether he's worth bringing in at that point. And then for the rest of the GWS team, there was some disappointing rookies. Darcy Jones a 33, Cadman a 25, Harvey Thomas a 14. I think actually with Jones, I'm pretty sure his break even's probably still a little low. Break even of 14. So you're just hoping that he holds his role in the team. But for Cadman and Thomas, they've got to go now. Thomas's break even's up to 73. He lost 22k this week, so I'm definitely trading him out this week. Look, if you look at his pass, he's got the potential to have a big score and then regenerate cash again. He's got 100, he got an 81, he got a 77. But I think for me, especially now that he's starting a sub, I think that I'm probably looking at getting rid of him. And Cadman, definitely got to get rid of him if you own him. Cash him out. Then for the Richmond and Bulldogs game, so I think for the Bulldogs, let me just have a look at he's a bit too expensive there. So Jaden Short 74, yep. So Seth Campbell got a 68. It is a lot better than what he was higher than his average. Now 11% own him, including myself. It was good that he actually got that because he went up 7k and his break even is now 45. So, he'll continue to kind of make a little bit of cash. As you can see, he's making like little bits of cash. Just thought I'd bring up his full profile. And if you have a look, so he dropped that sort of 10k in that game. I think that was against, was it Fremantle? And then, the rest of the time he's making cash. So I don't think there's I don't have to worry too much about him. I think definitely Thomas is the one to trade out. And I'll get to Gallagher in a moment, but I think Thomas is that player. But for Seth Campbell, pretty happy to just hold on to him for now. There's no one else really, I think, that interests me anyway for Richmond. But for the Bulldogs, Treloar a 154, continues putting up big numbers. Libba's not in the team. That helped Treloar. It also helped Richards. But Richmond is, of course, one of the best teams to play against as far as midfielders go. Even Harms got a 134. If Harms can get a 134, then if you've got any player, any premium that's playing against Richmond, then you need to put them up for a VC or a C. So if we have a look at this week, Brisbane plays Richmond. If you've got like Dunkley or Zorko in your team, I think it's probably worth putting at least maybe a VC on them. If you can, the game is Saturday night at 7:30. If you want to take the gamble, put the captaincy on them. Looking at my team for the week, I'll get into captaincies a bit later. But you're always looking at players that you have that are playing against, say, Richmond or North Melbourne or Hawthorn or West Coast. If they're playing against any of these teams, even mids against Geelong, if they're playing against any of these teams, you've got to really consider them, because teams are just kind of, or even teams are just beating up on these other good teams are beating up on these teams, but the players are, like, good fantasy players are really getting high scores against them. So just something to consider. So Treloar, Richards, big games, Harms. So Bont got a 126. That was a pretty decent score, but like, he had 19 handballs of those 32 possessions. So fortunately, he still kicked 2 goals, and that really helped his score to get up there. But and 7 tackles. But yeah, we want him to be kicking a bit more than handballing. Tim English a 109. So I think if he might be someone. He's like the 3rd best ruck at the moment as far as averages go. I think he went up 17k this week. He's under $1 million. He's good value. If you've got like a Grundy, you may consider trading, or even a Sherry, you may consider trading. But like I've said before, I think there's probably other parts of your team that's worth working on rather than your rucks. If you've got 2 of those 5 rucks. Bailey Dale at 104, so still continuing with his great form. I think he's, I want to see how many have jumped on him. So yeah, so 7% now. And look at his last 4 games, like 160, 134, 105, 104. The Dogs have GWS, a bit of a tougher game. But considering the form he's in, the role that he has, you'd have to still consider him as an option. He's only 848k if you want someone in your defense, someone who's in form. He had 30 possessions, 24 of those were kicks, and 6 marks. So he's got the great role, and he's getting the job done. So he's one to consider. McRae, I think we've just got to accept that he is this kind of player this year. He's going to be getting maybe the occasional ton, but for the most part, he's getting the 70s and the 80s, maybe a 90, and that's really where he's at. So, as I mentioned, you've got the 3 primos in our forward line, but you can pretty much have any player at F4, F5, F6 if they're averaging around that 70 mark or higher. And so you've got McRae averaging 79, but you want to obviously have picked him up at his lowest point. You don't want to be paying up for a player like McRae, but 739 is I guess a pretty good price for someone like McRae, who's probably going to average around the 80 mark, because we've got no one in our forward line. But I don't know, personally, the way I'm approaching it, I'm trying to upgrade my midfield and my defense first. I've already done my rucks, because with the forward line, there's really no one there to urgently have to bring in. I'm happy to just keep Powell, Fife and Reed there while I'm upgrading the rest of my team. Who else did we have there? So Harvey Gallagher, he got that 67, and that really helped. He went up 10k, break even of 41. So there's no real need to upgrade him, but you can, of course, if it works for your structure. That's something I'm considering. I could actually easily downgrade Harvey Thomas and upgrade Harvey Gallagher to Clayton Oliver. So I have that option. Or I could use Roberts instead of Gallagher. Let Gallagher make a bit more money and use Roberts instead. What that would mean, though, is that I'll have Oliver in my team, but then I'll need to play Gallagher on field, or Revel on field, or Harvey Thomas on field. I don't think I want to do that, so I may have to go early on someone like a Gallagher. That may be the call I have to make, or even on a Campbell. We'll just see. It may end up being probably Campbell, because I think Gallagher's got the lower break even. And he's got a good role and scored well. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still deciding on that. So we had a Rook come in and play. I don't know how to pronounce his name, though. I assume it's something like Freja or something like that, maybe. Something like that. I don't really know. This is how it looks, how it should be said. But let's see. So he put up a 62, that's really great for a rookie. Break even of -1. Yeah, if you want to bring him in, you can. Hopefully he's got the job security there. We don't really know. But he had a good game. And he looked good. So that's probably it for that game. We move on to Gold Coast and North Melbourne. And so Gold Coast, actually, going back, sorry, I didn't mention, there have been some players, I forgot to mention that are not worth considering, but just information we need to know. And now I've got Zach Reed. So Zach Reed actually played in the VFL, and he actually had a pretty decent game in defence. So I don't know how many. So there's still 19% of us that own him. We've probably just put him in a utility spot or in defence, I have, or utility. Forgot about him, but I actually think he's a chance to come in and play for the Bombers. They really want him in the team. So there's every chance he could come in the next week or two. So hopefully he can make some cash for us. And of course, the big issue last week with the Dogs was that Sanders was not, after such a good game, Sanders was not brought into the team. And they brought in other rookies like Freya and other players into the team, but Sanders ended up getting like 42 possessions in the VFL, so you'd expect that he would get named this week. So if you own Sanders, you're really hoping he does get named, because he's in really good form. But yeah, just another thing to look out for, that hopefully if he does get named, you may want to hold Sanders, even play him on your field if Bevo doesn't decide to sub him out, or use him as the sub. Yes, I think for other players that played well in VFL, I think I've covered probably the main ones. I might have forgotten one or two. But yeah, just going back to that Gold Coast North Melbourne game. So Tuke Miller a 108. I guess it's against North. Mac Andrew 107, Closey a 100. Like, it's against North, so it's hard to read how good these scores are. And then Flanders with a 98. Raul came back with a 91, which is pretty decent because he looked like he was struggling there for a while, because I think he was getting tagged. I think Will Phillips was tagging him there for the most part. And then they dropped that tag a little bit later in the game. I think that's, from when I watched the game, that's what it looked like. But yeah, when the tag was dropped, Raul actually did quite well. Sexton an 88. I don't know how many of you have Sexton. Still 16% owned, so some of you have held on, and you'd be so wrapped with that. Came on and got an 88. So obviously now he gets his cash generation going. We'll see whether Hardwick plays Sexton over Graham. And then looking through the rest of Gold Coast team, so you had Jake Rogers with a 50. So he's doing all right with his cash flow. 44k overall, break even of 22. It's not ideal. That's probably it for Gold Coast. With, I guess, Tuke, it's 853k he's at, averaging 98. Yeah, I wouldn't really consider him. I think he's more of a super coach player, to be honest. LDU, a 105. Again, you're not touching that, I think. You want to see him getting consistent tons. Zach Fisher, so with Sheasel in the midfield, you've got like Fisher and McKercher just getting a bit more ball. So I think that's two decent scores from Fisher. So for the 18% that have held him, you'd be pretty happy with the last two scores. His break-even's 58, and he's been able to generate a little bit of cash now. So you're obviously holding. I wouldn't be bringing him in though. McKercher an 88. Again, very happy with how he's going. Break-even of 21, and he's made 295k. And that's just his last three scores: 109, 99, 88. Just doing his job. It's great. Very fortunate to have him still. Tom Powell a 77. That's Tom Powell. He's getting 70, around 70s every game, and I'm okay with that. I don't mind that. I'm more focused on fixing the rest of my team up. Sheasel's the concern, so we've got to make a decision on that. Are we sticking with him? Are we going to trade him? He's got the midfield role, and it's not he's obviously not going to be scoring the way he is in defence. So, you may want to give him another week. If we see one more week of a low score with him in the midfield, we may trade. There's always the risk that we trade him, and then the very next week he goes back into defence. So that's obviously the gamble of the game and the risk that we take. But for now, I'm sticking with Sheasel. I need to fix some other things in my team. Obviously, I need to get that rookie off my field. So that's why I'll be focusing on things for this week. Comben got a 70, so that's pretty good for his owners. But nevertheless, I still think it would be time to move him on. Got a break even of 54 though. Guess you could probably hold him. And then Sherry a 57. So that wasn't great. But again, these ruckmen are going to have the occasional bad game. You're not going to trade Sherry out for a 57 when he's, like the fourth best ruckman to go with. So and still averaging over 100. He's averaging 101. So you're still holding with him. I think probably more other urgent things to look out for. And then Hardiman, hopefully he keeps his spot. Happy with the 47, and hopefully he generates some kind of cash. Collingwood and West Coast, very happy with Nick Dacos. Obviously, you'd expected that with the West Coast playing against West Coast. Good to see Jack Crispy just played purely in the middle field. It's very hard to read these scores because the Pies had a lot of players out. And even like with Sidebottom, he's got a new roll-off half-back. Maybe is that something to look at? Maybe we give him one more week, see if he still has that half-back role and if he can still score, because you never know. That could be an option. He's only 543k, so he's dirt cheap. You can see his scores are pretty average, but then to get 94, it was against West Coast. If he, against Adelaide this week, can score another 90 or 100 and he's got the same role, then maybe a cheapie to consider. Great to see Joe Richards in the team and play well. Again, he'll be a popular pick for this week with that 81. And he looked good. The Pies obviously love him. But the job security is the issue because the Pies have a number of players to come back into that team. But hopefully, his job security is good. Even Finn McRae came in for a 71. But again, you're not thinking or picking McRae. Job security issues, like you just don't want to take risks with like that. It's the whole reason why I picked Revel instead of Sullivan. I kind of did feel that Revel had the better job security than Sullivan, because you kind of expect Sullivan to come out when Degoe and Mitchell come back into the team. But Sullivan did all right. Still 64 points in 77% game time. Had 18 possessions and kicked a goal. So it's pretty good from him. Good game. It's probably about it. And then with West Coast, Collingwood actually copped even more injuries. Bytel, Howe and Harrison. So how that's going to affect their team, and some of these rookies that have come on may have a little bit more job security because of that. Liam Duggan, like I said, a 102. So he's actually having a decent year. He's one to consider for our defense because he's in the top 6 to 10 defenders with the way that he's been scoring. And then Harley Reid. So only a 54 from him. That's okay. You could trade him out if you want to. He made 9k this week, break even of 63. But just remember, like some of the scores that he has put up in the past, 78, 81, 80. It's not too bad, but if you don't have anyone else to trade and all you've got is Reid and you want to get to a good player, I can understand that trade. But I guess this is the thing, like you've also got to look at your D5 and D6, your M7, your M8, your F5 and F6. Like, what kind of players are you playing there? Are you playing players that have the potential to score decently? Or are you playing players that are only going to get the 40s and the 50s? Like just for this week, I had to sort of sacrifice to have Revel on the team. But I was so lucky that obviously all my other players played well. But, it was only for this week. And so now I'll be able to get rid of him and actually get in an underpriced premium in Oliver and put him in that position. Then I think the Crows had a rookie come in and play, and he scored a 41, but we don't know about his job security, so that's Dua. And it's probably it. And just want to quickly get to this last game. So Jordan Dawson with a 118 and nearly won the game off his own boot at the end there. So he continues to do well. Matt Crouch as well, and even Rory Laird all had good games, good scores. Saligo dropped off a little bit of 79, but you'd expect him to pick up again. He still has the CBAs. Just looking through that game for the CBAs. So the main CBAs there were Crouch and Saligo. So he's still getting CBAs, and then Laird, and then even Dawson only had 50%. Rankin had 33% CBAs, but Rankin still managed to score a 104 because he kicked 3 goals. All pretty good. If you've got Dawson and Crouch, you're holding. Are you bringing them in? Well, with Dawson, you're probably looking at bringing him in purely because he's averaging 109. He's getting good scores. He's got a good run coming up. He's obviously an uber premium worth looking at. Laird is a little bit more inconsistent. In recent times, his last 3 games, a 121, a 100, and a 109. But he had those 2 games in the middle. But now he's up to 885, break even of 98. You got to consider him. He's a pretty decent midfielder, as we know. He is an option, a cheaper option under 900k. The Daniel Curtin is a bit of a tough one. As I mentioned before, I've brought him in. There's 17% that obviously would have brought him in either 2 weeks ago or last week. With the Josh Worrell injury, you'd expect him to hold his position, but we don't know. Anyway, there's nothing really I can do about it for now. I want to focus on other things in my team. So if he doesn't play, he doesn't play. It's just the way it is. I've got other players that are... Eventually I'm going to be able... I'll max out a little bit in being able to downgrade, upgrade. And all I can afford is to downgrade. And that's the week that I do a double downgrade. And it's possible in that week I might just bring in other rooks that seem to have good cash flow. Seems to be working for me so far. It's how I normally play the game. And that's probably it for Brisbane. The last game saw a 114 from Dunkley. He's got to be one you look at this week just because the Lions have Richmond at home. That's going to be an absolute thrashing. And there's going to be some massive fantasy numbers. So you'd expect ones like Dunkley and Zorko, if you have them, to go big. Zorko go to 109, just still doing his thing at half back. And then for the rest of the team, so Revel did all right, a 57, and that was actually not bad. In 53% game time, he got 57 points, 15 possessions, 10 kicks, 4 marks. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that, and hopefully he holds his spot there, playing around half forward. And I had a rook come in, Brain, didn't really do a lot. And that's probably about it as far as players to think about, to consider. But looking at some of the other things that I may have missed, so let's have a look at some of the break-evens. So with our lowest break-evens, obviously Joe Richards with a negative 13. He's probably going to be the popular rookie to bring in this week. Maybe a Sullivan, maybe a Revel. But I think Joe Richards might be brought in because likely he'll probably play the next few games and he could definitely generate some decent cash in that time. Interesting, Pete Ling, well, he was already really a bit expensive, but, he didn't even play. But yeah, so Sullivan, Revel, Richards... they're probably the main ones. I don't think there's any other real rooks that we're going to be considering aside from those 3 this week. For the other break-ins, so Sheasel, if you don't have Sheasel, his break-even's 167. So you're going to wait till he bottoms out. There's every chance of that if he still plays in the midfield. Rosie should come back this week. 156 break even. So you're waiting till he bottoms out. Keep an eye on him. Whitfield, as I mentioned, the 143 break even in the top 10 averaging defenders. So you would have to consider him. Merritt, every chance to get that 140 this week, break even. But yeah, hopefully he drops. As I mentioned before, Tom Green, he's really bottomed out. You're looking at bringing him in next week or the week after or after his bye. Errol Goulden as well, he's dropped a little bit in price. We've got a few here with some kind of high-ish break-evens and ones to kind of consider in price who have dropped. So I've just mentioned a few. You've got to see what works for you and works for your structure as well. But going to my team and what I'm planning to do this week, so likely I will probably trade Thomas for Richards. This is a pretty obvious pick. That leaves me with 408k. So my options are to trade maybe Campbell. So I could probably trade. I could either do Roberts and trade Roberts down, bring closer to the. But I don't really want to do that. I really want to get Revel off the field. Roberts has the potential to actually put up a 70 or an 80. I know he's going to lose a bit more cash again, but I think I'm prepared to risk that. I think Sydney, that's right, they've got Carlton at home, so the ball may be around him a fair bit. We'll see how he goes with Roberts, but I think I'm going to be trading Campbell. I'll bring Gallagher into my forward line. That will give me... hold on a second. Let's just try that again. Wait. So what am I doing? That's right. So Campbell, swap with... no, hold on. Wait. I messed this up. Wait, let me just start again. Sorry. I'll start again. So it was Thomas for Richards. Okay. And then Campbell, swap with Gallagher. And bring in Oliver. Okay. So they're probably the trades I'll make. It leaves me with 96k in the bank, which is, nice to have. So Oliver comes onto my field. Revel goes into my onto my bench as an emergency, unless Graham plays, and then I'll put him on as an emergency. The other option I might do, if Graham does come in, I might actually swap Graham with Curtin, Hardiman with Reed. So I'll have Reed and Graham here, and I'll put the emergency on Graham, and if Graham plays and scores well and Reed's not playing, then I can just do the loophole. So that is one option. But now I'm in midfield. I'm pretty happy with that. I've got Oliver there, and so now in midfield I think my team's looking pretty good. Roberts, McKercher have the potential to score well. Wilson and Closey do as well. Powell, Fife and Reed all have the potential to score 70 and above, and all my premiums are averaging fairly well. They can all get pretty good scores, so I'm pretty happy with that. For my VC and my captain, that's the thing. I think with Gold Coast and Geelong, if you've got a Rowell or a Miller or an Anderson, you could potentially put the VC on one of them. Obviously, you can put the VC on Heaney or Walsh in the Sydney and Carlton game Friday night. I think the Collingwood game at the MCG against Adelaide, I think I'll probably be putting the VC on Dacos in that game. And then, so... yeah, GWS and the Bulldogs, sure. Bont is an option. Tom Green's an option. But the St Kilda Freo game, there's an option there to captain Sarong or Steele. So I probably will be thinking about that. But maybe I might take the gamble, go Zorko against Richmond at home. I think he should really ton up nicely. I don't have Merritt, otherwise I would have chosen Merritt instead against North. Even Butters against Port is an option. I may put it on Butters or Zorko, I'm still thinking about. The other option as well, a lot of options, is Melbourne against West Coast in the last game. I could put it on Gawn. He'll be rucking against Williams. You'd think that he would dominate in that game. So we actually have a few options, or I have a few options. And just very quickly, I wanted to just go through the buys with you. The buys are coming up now. We're into round 10, and we got the buys in round 12. So we've got 2 weeks. And now is the time that we need to start looking at the buys. And so there's a few different strategies, which I'll probably go into more detail next week and the week after. But I thought I'd just have a quick look at my buys at the moment. So in round 12, I'll have all these players playing. So that leaves me with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hopefully Graham plays, but I can't count it. So that's 10, 11, 12 in the rucks. Flanders 13, 14, 15. So I'm obviously pretty low on players in round 12. So I'm going to have to I'll have 3 trades. So I'm probably going to have to make a few trades to balance that out over the next few weeks. Round 13 obviously is not going to be an issue. I've only got the 3 players there and I've got bench cover for that. Round 14 should be pretty good too. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 with Revel playing, 12, Marshall, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, maybe 18. So round 12 is not that great. Round 4, as you notice, I'm not counting Hardiman or Curtin. I haven't been counting them. There's every chance they could play, but I haven't been counting them. And then round 15, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 18. Yeah, so the buys are not looking the best at the moment. But again, like I said, I'm not counting some players. It looks like round 15, I'll have a few extra players. So I might start by maybe bringing in 1 or 2 players who are playing in round 15 and bring them in to help me with my round 12 buys. But yeah, I'm going to start looking into that a bit more deeper. But yeah, definitely with 2 weeks to go, we should really be looking into our buys and just seeing how we shape up for the buy season. Because during the buys, for the buy period, during the buys, it's where we can really make and break our season. We want to come out of the buys hopefully ranked around the same rank, but obviously hopefully ranked better. We want to see our team looking better after the buys, more premiums in there, and that's the aim, is to really find that balance between all of this with all these changes. So good time to have a look at it. So hopefully this coming week, so we got our injury report coming out tomorrow. We'll get a better idea of some of these players that might be coming back into the team or some players that might be missing. So always keep an eye on that. Then we got our game on Thursday night. And so hopefully, we're all able to have a pretty decent fantasy week coming up. I'm hoping and expecting, again, a decent score. Maybe not the 2307 that I got this week. I was pretty fortunate. But now that I'm ranked sort of under 6K, I really want to make that move now from here on. And particularly once I get after the buys into that sort of top 3, top 2K, and just continue to make progress that way for the rest of the year. And obviously the aim is to get a hat. I want to try to get into that top 100. The history is probably against me to get a hat from where I am at the moment. But I have been ranked probably worse than this in other years and got to, about 200 rank, 200 to 300 or 400 in a couple of years. So, there's the potential to be able to get that high. But yeah, it's all about making sure that you're getting to full premium as quick as you possibly can. So thanks again, guys. Really appreciate appreciate your patience and sticking it out with me for this last hour and 25 minutes. Hopefully, some of the insights I've been able to provide has helped your team. Hopefully, your team goes well this weekend, and I'll catch you at the conclusion of round 10. See ya.